Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
FunBelt Podcast.
FunBelt Podcast.
FunBelt Podcast.
FunBelt Podcast.
It's just a great conference that is at a point right now where I think clearly the best group of five conference in the country.
The state of Sunbelt football is the strongest in our history.
And we got to continue to showcase what our league's about.
Welcome back to the FunBelt Podcast. My name is Jeremy Harper. His name is Shane Metlin from the Daily News Record covering JMU. Congratulations, Shane, on what looks like a 3-0 start so far for the JMU basketball team.
Yeah, they've been really good so far and leading at halftime as we record this in their fourth game. So we'll see. Maybe it's a good start. Maybe
do not jinx the Dukes by podcasting in the middle of the game. Oh my God. Don't you know the rules?
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Tonight's show, we are missing our fearless leader, Dusty Thibodeau of the Warhawk Report. He is out tonight, so it's just Shane and I. So that gives us carte blanche to criticize, besmirch not only the ULM Warhawks, but perhaps the Astros as well. As usual, this show has no sponsor. If anybody out there would like to sponsor FunBelt Podcast, please reach out, slide into our DMs. We'd be happy to obtain some sort of sponsorship. Until then, you receive this penetrating insight free of charge. And we're just happy to give it to you, aren't we, Shane? Shane.
We are.
We're in this weird nexus point, Shane, this sort of cosmic balance in the universe, this sort of eclipse between basketball and football, right? It's like the end of the football season, but the beginning of the basketball season. So if your football team is kind of in the dumpster, you can take heart because it's basketball season now, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe it's not too late. It's too early for your basketball team to have already tanked. So you've got a little bit of hope there. And if your football team is doing well, you can kind of be like, okay, well, in the background, I got basketball. I'm still going to be focused on football. I love my team, but look, there's my basketball team too. So it seems like there's more subatomic particles crammed into the universe at this time more than at any time in any period of time. Would you agree with that scientific assessment, Shane?
Yeah, I think it's very scientific. And yeah, I mean, it's a great time of year. I mean, you're talking about, if you're in the dumps in one sport or optimistic in another, or you could be like Southern Miss, and both are a little bit better than maybe people thought they were going to be starting the season. And, then you're really feeling good.
Yeah. I mean, it's really a magic time of year. Like the opposite of that to me is when the final pitch of college baseball is thrown in the baseball World Series, College World Series. And it's like, there's nothing for months, it's just a wasteland of waiting for fall to begin. And you can get right back into that cycle. So I feel right now we are at the peak. We're at the apex. We're standing on top. And I thought maybe tonight first we talk a little bit about basketball before we dug into the football season, which is really coming to a thunderous crescendo. Let's talk a little bit about basketball and how the Sun Belt has come off to a pretty good start. Shane, what do you think of this sort of? I think the Sun Belt never really has great, by and large, doesn't have a great schedule for out of conference, but the Sun Belt has picked up some wins.
Yeah, it's not easy to schedule games. And they're playing a lot of non-Division I games have been on the schedule so far.
Yes.
That you can't take a lot out of. But Sunbelt's got some high major conference victories right now. They've got Southern Miss, who I mentioned before, not expected to do much in the Sun Belt, goes to Vandy and wins. They've got wins over, ACC teams, or, a close loss in Georgia State's case to an ACC team right now. Like I said, we're recording this in the middle of a bunch of games. App State's looking good at Louisville. Those are some, maybe some of these teams are down, but for the Sun Belt to get SEC, ACC wins when those are your neighbors and you're trying to build a basketball brand, it's a big thing to do for this early in the season.
Absolutely. And then you got South Alabama playing Alabama. I believe they have the Crimson Tide in Mobile tonight for that game. And that's that's a nice one. I know that last season, South Alabama played the Crimson Tide really close at Alabama. So I'd be interested to see how South Alabama does against them this year. But yeah, it's great. So far, I feel like everything's more or less gone the script. We've seen some goofy upsets. Queens upsetting Marshall, for instance, although you insisted that Queens might be a pretty good team. So I don't know anything about Queens, but I'll take your word for that. My Arkansas State did okay against LSU. They were an 18-point underdog in that game. They ended up losing by 9. So they sort of cut that deficit in half. ULM, they came back, had a great win over something called Dallas Christian or Christian Dallas or something like that. Yeah, sure. Okay. It's a lot of Division III kind of teams out there that the Sun Belt's collecting wins, but it's a lot of ways. It's like, it's better to win those games than it is to lose those games. And I just like seeing that. How you like your JMU going in these first 3 games, not counting this game?
They've looked really good so far. They're, just crushing teams, and the teams they've played have progressively gotten better, and they still beat I think it's going to be a pretty solid Buffalo team by 35. I don't expect them to continue to shoot the ball as well as they have so far, but it's been a very promising start. I also have to say, you warned me about the jinx, and Louisville came back and beat App State by 1. So,
no way!
Yeah.
Oh, look what you've done. It's all your fault. Well, I guess it's our fault. It's our fault for that. You know what? And I'd probably jinxed them too, because I tweeted out how great that. I don't know. Have you ever seen Appalachian State in action in basketball?
Not in person. I've seen them on TV a few times, but
now last year the Mountaineers had some of the stiffest defense that I'd ever seen in person. I mean, those guys, they just play a style of basketball that almost kind of reminds me of Princeton in a way. Just kind of just stuffy, hard-nosed, under the basket basketball that's really hard to score points on it. And it looked like that's what was happening to Louisville in that first half. Couldn't get any points by the Mountaineers. I did notice that they had found a way to score on the Mountaineers in the second half. That's a too bad to have that loss against Louisville. Louisville's not that good. I think they already had some pretty embarrassing losses.
Yeah, it's not a vintage Louisville team, but I still think, for the conference building a brand in the sport, that would have been a big one. But alas.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to have that feather in the cap. It's kind of like beating Notre Dame. It's whether they're good or they're bad, that's just fine. You know what has the college football playoff released their top 25 yet?
I don't know. I haven't been checking Twitter for that. I've got too many other things up on the screen right now.
Yeah, you know what? I normally see that. I haven't seen any buzz on that. So it's kind of fun. I don't know are they supposed to release one tonight? Surely they are.
I think so.
Yeah, because I was going to gripe about it. Yeah, the AP. Well, all right. So the AP, they ranked Coastal Carolina. They ranked them behind Tulsa, which bugs me. I feel like Tulsa is not Tulsa. I'm sorry, Tulane. I feel like Tulane's getting way too much credit. It really bugs me that the Sun Belt, which has been a really good football conference this year, has had to. I don't know what it has to do to get recognition that goes above and beyond the Americans. I don't know why Tulane is getting all this credit. They beat Kansas State, and that's really all they've got. And somehow we're still on the second fiddle behind Tulane. Can you explain that, Shane? Shane, you're a seasoned sports guy. Please explain to me what's happening here.
I think it's basically entirely the Kansas State victory for Tulane, which I'll admit is impressive. It's a good win. It's probably the best win that anybody in this conversation has right now. But, I do think it's hard to justify or explain how Coastal Carolina is not showing up in the college football playoff rankings at all. I think you can make a case for either one of them who's better in the AP top 25 and in the, it's an actual debate between Coastal and Tulane, I feel like right now, and both sides can make their case, but I don't understand why we're not seeing Coastal in these college football playoff rankings and haven't yet. And they're 8-1. Their one loss does look bad at this point because ODU's fallen off the table. It's, they're riddled by injuries. ODU is not any good anymore. We'll just be frank. I think they're playing pretty well at the time, but
I think ODU is one of those teams that was playing a little bit above its head. It always surprised me. I would talk about the ODU defense, and then I would look at overall stats, total defensive stats, and they're in the bottom third of defensive stats. It's just that they're very tough. They've got a really tough red zone defense. But apart from that, the one thing that Coastal Carolina has in common with Tulane is having both played Southern Miss. And Tulane lost to Southern Miss at Tulane. So Coastal Carolina beat Southern Miss. So I know that's kind of a weak way to measure teams, but still, Tulane has 2 losses. Coastal has 1. I just don't understand how that works. I do understand how it works out. It's a lot of laziness. I think a lot of people beyond the top 10 don't really give much thought. They like they like the story of Tulane. Tulane's a really small school. They got Willie Fritz. Everybody likes Willie Fritz. People want Tulane to be a top 25 school. I just don't know if they are. But hey, you know what? Let's stop. Shane, let's stop talking about. Why did you get me talking about Tulane? You got me all talking Tulane, man. Who cares about the Green Wave? We're talking about the FunBelt. Let's talk a little bit about the Sun Belt and how they performed last week. Let's start with that JMU game. Hey, JMU, they're back.
Yeah, well, Todd Centeio was back, and that makes a huge difference for JMU. It's Kurt Signetti said after the game he played at about 80% at ODU, and at 80% he completed his first 11 passes, and he threw for 300 yards, and he ran for a touchdown, and he looked much more like himself. And the JMU offense looked a lot more like it did the first 5 games of the season, and they still didn't play anything close to their best game of the season, but they handled ODU on the road. It was a blowout by the end, and they're back, at least to some degree. They're back in the conversation. If they win out, they're going to technically finish first in the East. They won't play a championship game, but they'll technically finish first in the East if they win out.
And wouldn't that be a nice way to open their what do you call it, the inaugural season in the FBS? Way to go! Yeah. Meanwhile, ODU, they dropped their 4th straight. Ever since beating Coastal Carolina and making Coastal Carolina really rethink the way they operate, just haven't been able to put anything together. I know that Ricky Rainey knew that he was going to have a tough season this year, and he's really it finally kind of caught up to him. So I believe he's one of a handful of Sun Belt teams that have no chance for any kind of postseason. Not speaking of postseason, but speaking of your sagacity, your wisdom, your crystal balls. When we were talking about ULM Georgia State last week, Thibs was kind of like, ULM hasn't won on the road since like 2019. I'll believe it when I see it. You, Shane, on the other hand, were like, oh, I don't know if I give the Panthers much credence. I really think ULM could do something with this game. And sure enough, ULM wins this game. How did you know, Shane?
I just feel like, it was sort of just a gut feeling that like ULM had been building towards that next step. They've taken those steps that a rebuilding program takes, where they, beat a rival and then they, win some game, string some games together where they're in the mix for a bowl game. And then that next thing is to do it on the road. And it just seemed like a good opportunity for them to do that, because you never know what Georgia State team's going to show up week to week.
That's right. Georgia State and the Cajuns are two of the most mysterious and frustrating teams in the Sun Belt. One week you're going to see a great Panthers team, and the next week you're just going to see a crap Panthers team. And the Cajuns are the same way, and that's why they're 5-5. They have a game, and they look like they're the Cajuns of the old, and then they get blown out by some team that they weren't supposed to get blown out by. It's really strange to see. Meanwhile, my Red Wolves finally came away with a win against the Minutemen, possibly the worst team in the FBS, but the Minutemen hung in there. The Minutemen scored 3 times as many points as their season average against the Red Wolves. Shane, that was tough to watch. Listen, a win is a win. I'm glad to see a W in the win column, but man, I am one of those guys that, even though I don't anticipate the Red Wolves being very good at basketball this year, I am looking forward to basketball season. I'm waiting for this football season to come to its conclusion. So it was really good, though, to have that win, to go home and not be just totally angry. That's always nice. What other games am I missing of significant note? Coastal Carolina and Southern Miss. Oh, my God. I thought Southern Miss was going to come away with that victory. What happened?
I don't actually know. I didn't get to see really any of it. I was following the score, and Coastal, they pulled it out. They pulled it out without Grayson McCall, which is important. Maybe they'll get him back before it's all said and done this season. And if they can continue to eke out these wins, they at least have all that in front of them. The Sun Belt Championship, the possible Cotton Bowl, though it doesn't look good right now, as we talked about the rankings before. But they at least have that in front of them. Well,
you said you didn't see the game. I didn't see the game either, but I studied the statistics afterwards, and it looks like the prototypical Coastal Carolina win, where Coastal Carolina comes away like right away gangbusters. They score like 2 touchdowns and a field goal, maybe 3 touchdowns and a field goal. I forget exactly how it went, but they got an early lead. And then, as usual, the opponent, this time Southern Miss, start chipping away at that lead. Just chip. And pretty soon, Southern Miss in the third quarter, actually, or maybe it was early in the fourth, took the lead. Then Coastal Carolina just came out with a sort of a touchdown that sealed the game, put out their defense, and for 9 minutes held the Southern Miss scoreless, ended up winning that game in Conway. But once again, it was a less than 1 score game for Coastal Carolina to come away with a victory. I'm done betting against Coastal Carolina. They've won me over. I've decided that it's a damn shame that they lost to ODU, because we'd be talking about Coastal Carolina in even a shinier light. But they're good, and to do that without Grayson McCall is quite impressive. Who's not impressive, Shane?
Who?
Appalachian State. Not impressive.
Yeah. Not particularly. No. Didn't think we'd be saying that at this point in the season.
I know. This game, it was kind of billed, at least in my mind, as the giant killer game. It was Marshall, who had come off beating Notre Dame, and it was Appalachian State, who had beat Texas A&M. Both of those teams were top 10 teams at the time. And now both of them were struggling to make bowl eligibility. They both had identical records coming in. I had some faith in Appalachian State. I kind of thought that there was no way they were going to lose that game. And quite frankly, I feel like Marshall's kind of finding themselves again.
Yeah, and Marshall's defense is really good. I mean, I go back to, when I saw him in person against JMU, and JMU was shorthanded, and I think it could have been a different game if they had Todd Centeio, but you can take that out of it, and Marshall's defense was still really good and has been really good week to week this season. I mean, they keep what's a completely one-dimensional offense. That's basically all Kalal Laybourne running the ball. It's their entire offense, and they keep them in games like week in, week out. And it's pretty impressive to see that defensive performance this year.
With Marshall being on the East Coast, I don't always get to keep a close eye on what they're doing. But Laybourne, he is by far the most prolific runner this year. He has 1,200 yards. He has 14 touchdowns. I mean, it's just like, I don't think everybody was looking at Ali, and they didn't really think about this Laybourne guy. And he's really good. He might, I think there's a big case to be made for Carlton Marshall. Marshall Carlton. Who's the guy for Troy?
I'm not even sure.
The defensive guy. The guy.
Oh, yeah. Are you talking about for player of the year?
Yeah, Carlton Marshall, I think is his name.
Yes, but they'll do a defensive and an offensive player of the year, right?
We do. The Sunbelt does do that. Well, all right. They do do they do player of the year then offense? I think they do all three. I think we do player of the year, then defensive. Labor might end up be the offensive player of the year, but he might be the player of the year. He just really racks it up. I'm really impressed with that guy. Here's something I wasn't too impressed with. Troy 10, Army 9.
Yeah, but Troy wins those games, and it's not the first time they've done that. Like where it doesn't look great, just going across the ESPN ticker, but they beat teams and they continue to do it. And their defense, talking about Marshall's defense, Troy's defense is also better.
Yeah, Troy was down 9-0 in that game fairly early, and it took them the whole game to pound out 10 points and take that lead at the end of the game. So it's kind of like Coastal Carolina. They're just kind of doing just enough to win games. Makes me a little bit nervous.
Yeah. If that ends up being the championship game, who's going to do just a little bit more to win that one?
It'll be like a Jim Brown game, just expending just enough energy to get that first down. That's kind of how they play. Sort of a rope-a-dope offense, and it's just stronghold defense. Both teams really have good defense. And then I guess the last game that I can think of note was a game that was really important to the head coach of Texas State, Jake Spavital. He kind of really needed to come up with a good performance against South Alabama. South Alabama sort of dumped on him early, and Texas State kind of came back late in the game, but didn't nearly have enough to overcome what South Alabama had done to them. Now there's a lot of grumbling in San Marcos. A lot of grumbling about getting rid of Spavital. Not even sure if when Arkansas State comes to San Marcos this weekend, if Spavital will be there. Have you heard any rumblings through your newspaper network?
No, but I did find it interesting. Before the game, our friend Kev Chardello, who covers Texas State, he tweeted something I found kind of interesting, probably meaningless, but he tweeted that Jake Spavital was the only Texas State coach who wasn't wearing Texas State gear, and he was wearing all black. And my first thought was like, he's going to his own funeral here.
I know. I saw that. I thought
I was like, this is it for him. It's like he's dressing for his own funeral. Like,
it's a little
probably absolutely meaningless, but that was my initial thought when I saw Kev tweet that. I was just like, wow.
Yeah, and I have a feeling Keith and others there wouldn't have minded if the casket had shown up at halftime and poor Jake Spavital just put himself inside of it and they wheeled it away. But yeah, it's not been a good good few years for Texas State fans who have been waiting for that sort of magic moment when things would all work together. I think they really thought the addition of Lane Hatcher might be that stir that finally stirs it up. But
Yeah.
for whatever reason, it just hasn't happened. So many heartbreaking losses this year. A lot of kind of like reverse Coastal Carolina, and just doing just enough to lose.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
I feel a little bit bad for him because for one, he seems like a very likable guy.
Everybody loves them.
They're better. I think they've improved as a program this year, but the West division is better than we thought it was going to be. It's deeper than we thought it was going to be. They play a fairly tough East. They have to travel to JMU. That's a fairly tough draw with the East division. Like, it was going to be tough for them to win 6 games this year. I feel like he's improved a little bit, but just isn't going to meet the standard that the new administration there is kind of set for him.
Yeah, you do bring up an important point about the division. To me, there's no question that the 2 weakest teams in the Sun Belt are Texas State and Arkansas State, and they both belong to the West. But beyond that, I feel like the East and the West are very evenly matched. And I feel like maybe even Troy and South Alabama could make cases for being the 2 best teams in the Sun Belt. I don't know if that's true. I will only know until the championship game and get that all hammered out. But it has been, to me, a little bit of surprise how strong the West has been this year. I think I counted head-to-head what it's been. I think it's something like 6 and 7. Sun Belt West 6 wins, Sun Belt East 7 wins. I thought Southern Miss was going to pull us over the top on the Sun Belt West. They couldn't quite get it done at Conway. There's a few more opportunities. I guess we'll see at the end. But until then, I think the East is still stronger, but maybe not as maybe the balance is a little bit better than previously thought. You know what it might be time for, Shane?
What might it be time for?
An update on that JMU basketball game.
Right now, JMU leads Howard 81-58 with about 6 minutes to go.
Wow, it's because it was a close game last time.
It was. And they've gone on a couple runs here, it looks like. And it looks like they're going to improve to 4-0 and all wins blowouts. It'd be interesting. They play number 1 North Carolina on Saturday. I'm going to go down to Chapel Hill. We'll find out if they're for real.
Now, if you guys win that'd be a nice feather in the cap of the Sun Belt. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be a little jealous too, because I've been waiting for my Red Wolves to come up with a kind of a win like that for about 30 years now, and I haven't gotten it. So also on the slate, Georgia State, they get a little bit of breathing room with Mercer, 57-52 right now. Mercer and Georgia State, they have a little rivalry between each other. They don't really talk about it so much, but they hate each other. And Mercer often comes on top of that matchup. So I know some people down in Georgia State's going to be happy if they somehow end up with this win against Mercer. There it is, 61-60, Appalachian State.
Oh, they must have taken a bucket off the board in review or something, because it originally said end of second half, Louisville 62-61 on the ESPN.
Okay, because I'm looking at here. It says App State's won. Wow, great.
So listen to the entire FunBelt podcast, everybody, so you know how this game actually turned out, because I led you astray early on.
Coach Kearns at Appalachian State doing a great job. He has such a great repertoire or repartee, I think is the word I'm looking for, with the student section there. He's really turned that program around. I know the Appalachian State used to just be a terrible basketball program, just was god awful when they entered the Sun Belt. Now they're contenders. I don't know if beating Louisville makes them contenders. Louisville is not very good, but they contended last year, and so far it seems like they could be good this year. Very interesting.
Tell me this before we move on. Did Appalachian State just become one of those teams you talked about at the beginning that is disappointed in football and looking forward to basketball at this point in the year? Who would have guessed that?
I know. All right. So I do know that annually, that distinction always belongs to Georgia State. They're always like ready for basketball season by this time. But you're right. Who would have thought that Appalachian State fans would be 100% vested in basketball?
They're turning to basketball to get their solace. Right now. Yeah.
It kind of reminds me. I lived in Tennessee I lived in Knoxville for a year, and the year I was there, the football team was like was preseason top 10 ranked. It was supposed to be a gangbuster team, and they weren't. They were terrible. They lost almost every week. It was awful. And there's this like funeral sort of attitude in all of Knoxville. I mean, they were just depressed. The city was just without life. But that year, Bruce Pearl was coaching their basketball team, and they were like unexpectedly good, and it really just sort of pumped up the city. Like the city really got behind basketball, which they hadn't gotten behind in years. Maybe that's what's happening at Appalachian State, Shane. We might just be seeing a transition of power from football to basketball out there at Boone.
Perhaps. I mean, we do have to admit that, like, it says something about Appalachian State's program that 5-5 right now is a massive disappointment. There's a lot of programs that would be thrilled to still have that chance for the 7 wins.
Yeah, and tell you the truth, that's what happens in the Sun Belt, is that you just have programs that have periods of sustained excellence, and they go a long time of always winning. I think about the old Trojan teams. There are some old North Texas teams that way. The Cajuns have been that way before. Arkansas State had 10 years of going to bowl games. And then you had Appalachian State, who had sort of a mediocre season their first year, and then ever since has been very dominating since then. It just happens. I think Appalachian State fans are probably in a bit of a what the hell moment. I mean, I already see fans sort of grumbling about Sean Clark and complaining about play calling and not necessarily calling for dismissals, but it's sort of getting there. And it is something that happened to Georgia Southern too, where Georgia Southern had that that sort of extended period of time when they were just unstoppable, and then suddenly they weren't. You have one bad recruiting class, or you hit a run of bad luck, and it's just hard to overcome. So I feel like maybe Appalachian State's in that period. I feel like there needs to be sort of an autopsy done on this season on them, just to see where things went wrong, because it is kind of interesting to see just how different of a team they look now as compared to years past. So maybe we should get our good friend TK from Appalachian State to give us a little autopsy at the end of the year.
I think he would have some interesting things to say.
Absolutely.
Based on his Twitter feed, I think he would have some interesting things to say.
I know. No, it's been so sad from him, because he's usually very pumped up about his Appalachian State Mountaineers, but not so this year. You know what it's time for? Not time for another update for JMU. I think we know that JMU is going to win that game, don't we?
It looks looking pretty solid right now.
I think so. I think it's time for second and short.
I think you're right.
Now, usually with second and short, I have two guys to choose from. It's just going to be you, man. You're going to have to do the heavy lifting on second and short, Shane. I need to know now, before we start. Are you physically, emotionally, and spiritually capable of carrying second and short?
I don't know if I'm physically capable of doing much, but I'm hoping I can handle the other two aspects of that.
Okay. All right. So it's time for second and short. And the premise of second and short is that we discuss upcoming games, and we keep it we try to keep it at 2 minutes. Is that right? 2 minutes? It's 2 minutes, right?
Yes. That's what we agreed on.
And I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna be transparent. This last couple times, I haven't even had a timer. I've just inside my head known what 2 minutes feels like. And I'm gonna keep that way. I think I know. I think I've got it.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's start with the first game. First game's kind of an early morning game. It's at 11 a.m. It's on ESPN 3, which is a little strange because it's a top 25 game. The Cajuns at Florida State, ESPN, 11 a.m. I honestly, Shane, I feel like this could be a very interesting and fun game. Cajuns are 5-5. They're looking to get that 6th win. They come and they play the Seminoles, the ACC, ranked 23, which I don't know anything really about these guys. I haven't really been paying attention to Florida State. I didn't even realize this was a ranked team before I started doing my little bit of research into it. What do you think? Is there a chance that Florida State has trouble with Andre Jones and the Cajuns defense?
I think there's a chance they have some trouble with it. I don't see the Cajuns going down there and winning outright, but I do think that I'm looking at a 24-point spread. That seems wide to me.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah. I don't really know what else to say about it. Like you, I haven't watched a lot of Florida State because I'm watching FunBelt games on Saturdays, and a little surprised to see a 7-3 ACC team ranked. Honestly, to be honest with you, I don't think I'm not expecting Louisiana to go down there and win, but they've been playing better. I feel like 24 points is just a lot if you're going to gamble on this one.
First of all, there seems to be way too many 7-3 teams represented in the AP Top 25. Don't get me started again on that, Shane. I already did my little huffing and puffing about that. I feel like I've wasted enough time. But to see Florida State 7-3 in the top 25, ahead of Coastal Carolina 9-1, I'm just a little upset about that. I'm going to move on past it, though. And I'm going to tell you what. First of all, I feel like the Cajuns have done a good job by elevating Ben Wooldridge as the number one quarterback. He was doing sort of the dual quarterback with Chandler for a while. It wasn't really working. Settled on this Wooldridge, who has thrown for 12 touchdowns in the time that he's been named the full-time starter. So he's doing pretty well. Not only that Andre Jones, the linebacker for the Cajuns, that guy is a legit beast. I feel like he's going to get his sacks. He's going to get his big tackles. I don't know if the Cajuns beat Florida State. I do know that you and I are in agreement that 23-24 point spread is a little ridiculous. I see the Cajuns beating the spread. How about you?
I agree.
All right. Next game on the docket, I bet you'll be watching. Georgia State at James Madison, 1 p.m. on ESPN+. We talked about Todd Centeio returning with a 300-yard game, looking more like Todd Centeio. Let's admit it, he hasn't looked like the same guy the last few weeks. As a result, JMU has dropped 3, then come back to the thump ODU. Meanwhile, Georgia State, coming from that loss to ULM, probably thinking about basketball season right now, but Georgia State needs a couple wins if they want to see the postseason. I know Sean Clark would like to make it. What do you think you're going to see in this game, Shane?
I feel like it's a good matchup for JMU. And I've said that previously when they played Marshall, and then it went the exact opposite way with the last minute injury change. But I just feel like JMU saw a better version of this offense to a certain degree at Louisville with the mobile quarterback. The quarterback wants to run. And they shut down Malik Cunningham at Louisville. That was not the reason they lost that game. They couldn't do anything on offense there. But I feel like they're built to slow down what Georgia State is good at. And I feel like at home, getting a little bit of momentum back, this should be a game that JMU can win.
I think this will be, in the Sun Belt, one of the most physical games at the line of scrimmage that you're going to see this year. You've got JMU, which is number 1 defending the run in the Sun Belt. Mm-hmm. You've got the Panthers, number 1 at running the ball in the Sun Belt. Rangers are running quarterback too. He'll get 100 yards easy any day. That's going to be a fun game. The Dukes are a 9-point favorite. I think that's accurate. I think that's a good spread. It's going to be a hard ass 9 points. It's not going to be easy 9 points. I think it's going to be a really scrappy, hard fought game. Georgia State needs it so bad to keep their bowl hopes alive. I know James Madison has designs on winning the division too. So there's plenty of interest on both sides. This is going to be one of the better games of the week. What do you think?
I think it should. I think, like I say, you don't know what to get week for week for Georgia State, but coming off the loss that they shouldn't have lost, I think they'll probably come out ready to play. I just feel like I said, the matchup favors JMU. The strengths and the weaknesses of both teams favor what JMU wants to do.
Half an hour later, at 1:30 p.m. on the ESPN Plus, Old Dominion and Appalachian State log heads. I feel like there's probably some regional hatred between the two. Seems like there might be. I don't know if there's what else they have going between each other. I do know this. I don't know much about Old Dominion. I imagine they're just about 100% ready for basketball right now.
I think
yeah, I mean, they've lost 4 straight after briefly being on top of the FunBelt East with 2-0 and having beaten Coastal Carolina. That being said, I don't have any more trust in Appalachian State. I can't tell you, Shane, how many times I put a few bucks on Appalachian State, just sort of remembering how good they played in the last 5 years. And sort of dismissing how poorly they played in 2022. I would not be surprised if Old Dominion finds a way to beat Appalachian State. And Appalachian State really needs these 2 wins to be bowl eligible. Are we going to see a motivated Appalachian State, Shane?
I feel like we're more likely to see a motivated Appalachian State than a motivated Old Dominion, to be honest. ODU, they're missing their 2 best offensive players.
Yeah.
They kind of, once it started getting out of hand on Saturday against James Madison, that kind of felt like the end of the season for ODU. They're too beat up. They're not going to make it to a bowl game. I don't know. I'm not expecting much out of ODU this weekend.
Well, Vegas is neither. Vegas has put down a 15.5-point line for the Mountaineers. And that's probably right. But like I said, I just can't pick Appalachian State anymore. They've broken my heart too many times, Shane. I'm just going to move on from Appalachian State. I wish them the very best, but I can't with any degree of confidence pick them to win over any team this year. I'm done. This next game is a little difficult. 2:30 ESPN3. They had a press conference today. Coastal Carolina at Virginia. Virginia coming off that real tragic shooting. 3 football players killed. 2 critically injured, still in the hospital. Coach held a press conference, like I said, this afternoon. They haven't made a decision on whether or not the game will be played. I don't think anybody would blame Virginia saying, hey, listen, this isn't a conference game. It doesn't really have a big impact on us one way or the other. We're just going to decline to play this game. I don't think anybody would say no to that. On the football side, Coastal Carolina almost needs this game. If they want to get that Cotton Bowl recognition, they've got to beat a Power 5 team to get that sort of recognition. So it would hurt Coastal Carolina in that way. Do you think this game's even going to be played, Shane?
I don't know. In the immediate aftermath, I didn't think there was any way. But the fact that they haven't, as of right now, haven't canceled it, said they're still deciding. They're meeting with the team, the players. Maybe they want to play. It seems possible if they haven't already made a decision. But I could see it going either way. And like you said, it's completely secondary to what matters most. But it is kind of a relevant thing nationally for, you know, that Group of 5 Access Bowl, whether or not Coastal Carolina gets to play this game. It's a terrible situation all the way around, you know, to talk about the football game at this point.
Yeah. It's
almost hard to talk about it as a football game, but it would mean a whole lot to Coastal Carolina to get the opportunity to play it.
Yeah, and it's kind of football wise, that's a shame. Real world wise, it's really confusing. Well, I get the idea of them wanting to play. They want to play for their mates. They want to come out and say, "Listen, we're going to dedicate this game to our friends." But at the same time, also, I just don't know how emotionally you can get up for something as trivial as a football game. Yeah. And you're right. I was expecting, when they held that press conference today, I was expecting the athletic director and the coach to say, "Hey, listen, you know, we spoke to Coastal Carolina and Jamie Chadwell. We all agreed we're just not going to have the game." That didn't happen. So yeah, that makes me think that it could very well happen. Cavaliers are a 2-point favorite, which tells me that Vegas is just sort of taking a pass on trying to prognosticate the game. I don't know. I don't know too much about Virginia. Didn't the Sunbelt clash with Virginia earlier this season?
Yeah, they barely beat ODU at home earlier this season. ODU had a chance to win that one late. Yeah, I mean, even before everything off the field happened, I was sort of surprised that Virginia was favored in this one. So trying to guess if it gets played, what the response from Virginia is going to be on the field is like almost impossible to guess how they play.
I thought maybe the 2 points, one, that's the home field advantage, but two, maybe knowing that Grayson McCall wasn't going to be there. So maybe
it's been a bad season it was a bad season for Virginia to begin with that, you know, turned into something completely different this week. And if they do decide to play it, I wouldn't even want to hazard a guess of how Virginia might play in it.
Moving forward, 2:30 p.m. on the NFL Network. Just love this bizarre relationship we have with the NFL Network. South Alabama at Southern Miss, 2:30 p.m. We have a team one team is struggling to keep up with the division leader, which that being Troy. Yeah, South Alabama really needs this win if they want to keep any hope alive of overtaking Troy. Southern Miss at 5 wins could have gotten it against Coastal Carolina, but now has to try to go get that 6th win versus South Alabama. They get to try to close that out at Hattiesburg, where they play really tough. Listen though, Coach Womack has a lot of incentive. Keep pace with the Trojans. I don't know who exactly has more incentive to win, but Vegas sees Jags as a 7.5 favorite. What do you think?
That seems about right. I think it's going to be a close game. Southern Miss, you know, plays nothing but close games and and has a lot to play for in this one. Is a good defense. That just sounds about right to me. I think it's going to be close, but I think South Alabama is a better team that can pull it out.
I think that South Alabama is a better team offensively and defensively. I think that Southern Miss, great work by Will Hall. Congratulations. You've done a good job this season. You've like I said, you've outkicked the coverage. But there's only so far that luck will take you. I feel like you used it for 3 quarters against Coastal and just ran out of steam. I don't see Southern Miss beating the Jags. I think the Jags are going to win this game. I would think twice about picking that spread, though. Southern Miss still seems to have enough luck to cause some problems, and that's just me. I don't know if I would pick Jags at 7.5. I love this game, Shane. ULM at Troy, 2:30 p.m. ESPN Plus. Oh my God! After seeing that Army game and then seeing ULM against Georgia State, this game could be a whack out kind of game. I mean, Troy scores the least amount of points in the Sun Belt outside of ODU. The Warhawks never had a problem scoring points. This could be an upset. Tell me I'm right on this.
Nothing would shock me at this point. But yeah, I mean, you look at it, like you said, Troy doesn't score a lot of points, and they're a 15-point favorite heading into this one. Sometimes they don't score 15 points in a game and win. So that seems pretty steep to me as a line there. But yeah, I feel like I'm thinking Troy's going to win, but I see it being another one that they just kind of grind out and let their defense save the day.
I tell you, playing at Veterans Stadium is a tough thing to do. But ULM has played Troy for years and years and years and years. So it's not like it's a new venue that they're going to be overwhelmed by. And there's something about the Warhawks. I can't put my finger on it, but they don't seem to give a shit. They just go in there, they play hard. They know they're sort of the underdog wherever they go. It doesn't matter who they're playing. The chances are that Vegas isn't going to like them. And they still somehow find ways to win games they're not supposed to win. They beat the Cajuns. They beat Georgia State. Two teams with tough defenses. Then they go up against Troy, who has a really tough defense. So it's not like they can't win against teams with good defenses. It's the teams that have good offenses that they have the most trouble with. This is my pick of the week, Shane. I put like $1 million on it, and by a million I put $9 on it. I put $9 on this game for ULM because I feel that confident. Join me in picking this pick. Come on, Shane.
I'll join you in picking it, but I would never join you in putting that much money on it.
$9. 9 big rocks. I
thought you said 90. Okay.
Oh, no,
that's a little bit better.
$9. That's all I had left in my betting account. I said, all right, I'm gonna put it on ULM. So I guess we'll see. I think you and I both agree that spread's a little generous. 15 points for Troy. That just seems a lot. But we'll see. Next game, 4 o'clock, ESPN 3. I told my wife I couldn't go out to dinner with her that night because I'll be watching this game. Arkansas State at Texas State. The battle for the Sun Belt basement. Both teams 1-5 in conference. Both teams 3-7. Yeah, 3-7 overall. Meeting in San Marcos for a battle of the oblivious. You know, you're a creature of the East. I understand this. You probably look upon it with a little amusement. But Shane, what do you think?
Well, this is the one you wanted to be the big rivalry, right? So they're coming in.
I hate the boot cats. They're sons of bitches.
They're coming in on even footing. It's a good game. I don't know. I kind of like Texas State in this one. Arkansas State doesn't seem to be the team they were early in the season. And they were losing games early in the season, but they were losing games close to pretty solid teams. Yeah. And it just seems to have kind of worn them down as the season's going on. And I mean, maybe we could say the same thing about Texas State, but they've been relatively competitive. I think, they've got the lane train this time. I think it's I'm leaning towards Texas State a little bit in this one.
Well, Texas State, they just lose heartbreakers. They're kind of like I said, they're sort of the opposite of Coastal. They they don't quite do enough to win. They've lost a lot of one-score games this year. And here's my thing. I think the Red Wolves will be ducking a lot of kitchen sinks all afternoon. I think Spavital in front of those home fans, in front of the home administration, will be like, listen, look, this is what I can do. Let me unleash what I've got. Here's what we're going to do. They couldn't do that against South Alabama because South Alabama's a legit good team. You can unleash whatever dogs you have against Arkansas State and see some results. So yes, even though I'm a citizen of Arkansas State, it's hard for me to pick against them. I do feel a little scared about this game. I do feel like Texas State at home at San Marcos really has the edge. It's 5.5 points for the Bobcats. That sounds right. Maybe even a little bit.
And as we mentioned before, I'm not sure this game is going to make much difference in the grand scheme of things, but the Texas State players might feel like they're playing for their coach to keep them around. I think is possibly a factor.
You know what? But there's also kind of a reverse there, Shane. Sort of a reverse figure four leg lock there. That, even though you've got the starting quarterback and the starting running back for the Bobcats, having once played for Arkansas State and having a little bit of revenge factor, there'll be some guys that really want to knock Blaine Hatcher down on his ass and want to knock Lincoln Perry down on his ass too. So there is a little grudge amongst A-State players too. I don't know if it's enough to overcome all the things Texas State's going to bring to the table on Saturday, but there's going to be some heat at that game. And maybe for the first time, I will finally get that rivalry that I've been looking for so long, Shane, that hatred that I want. I want hatred between these teams because I hate the Bobcats. They're sons of bitches. I can't add to that. Last game before we close out second and short. Marshall and Georgia Southern, 5 p.m. ESPN Plus. On the surface, if you just sort of glance at it, you'd be like, oh, all right, it's another FunBelt game. It should be a lot of fun. But there's a lot going on here. Marshall needs this win. Georgia Southern needs this win. They need these wins if they want to see some postseason. Now, in my mind, I feel like maybe Georgia Southern's run out of gas. They've had this sort of special season under Clay Helton, really changed the format of their team, playing in a style they've never played before, and have been playing it well. But I think we've seen the Cajuns kind of really exposed who they were. Should put out the blueprint of how you beat them. You just beat them with competent defense, which Marshall has. Marshall also has a terrific run game under Laybourne. Leading rusher in the Sun Belt. You know who's the worst team in the Sun Belt for defending the run, Shane?
I'm going to guess it's Georgia Southern.
It's Georgia Southern. So you can imagine Laybourne looking at this and going, I got to practice all my end zone dances because I'm going to be really busy. What do you see coming out of this game, Shane?
I'm agreeing with you. I think, you look at each team, they're kind of trending in opposite directions. And Marshall, like you said, Laybourne can run the ball. They can keep it they can run some clock. They can keep Kyle Van Treese from putting up those quick scores that he's able to do when it turns into a shootout. And the Marshall defense is really good. I like Marshall in this one. Not that it would shock me if it goes either way, but just like I said, these teams are trending in opposite directions, and Marshall's the one that's going a little bit up right now.
Yeah, I feel like Marshall's a team that's rediscovered its mojo and really wants to get that 7th win, which they need. Because they've got the 2 FCS games. Vegas gives them 4 points. I feel like they're gonna blow past those 4 points. I know they're playing at Georgia Southern. Playing at Statesboro is no fun. But other than that, I think really that's the only advantage they have. Kyle Van Treese, let's give it up for him. He's had a great season. He's thrown a lot of yards, for a lot of touchdowns. I just don't think he's going to do it against Marshall. But you know what it does? What has happened is that we have completed another episode of Second and Short. Yes! We have crossed the goal line. Spike that ball, Shane. Yes! Unsportsmanlike penalty. We don't care. We're through. We're done. Second and Short. We're the best. We did it without Dusty. It was hard, but we ate our vitamins. We left 110% on the field. We had a game plan. We stuck to it. No one believed in us, and we managed to close escrow. So congratulations, Shane.
Oh, thank you. Congratulations to you, Jay.
So in interest of closing out this episode of FunBelt Podcast, let's go ahead and go straight to it. Plugs, promos, parting shots. You can have all three. You can have two or three. You can have one of three, Shane. Let's hear what you got.
I can't think of a parting shot. I'll just do the plug. I'll just say,
okay.
Just say, check out dnronline.com/Sunbelt Extra and read about all kinds of good JMU and Sunbelt content. I'll just plug that.
Excellent plug. I don't think Orson Welles could have done a better job plugging his wares than you just did right there. Congratulations. Good work.
Thank you. What do you have?
I'm going to go the same way. I'll go ahead and plug HalRazor.com. HalRazor is doing yeoman's work covering both the Sun Belt and the Red Wolves. Have some analysis on the big Texas State versus Arkansas State hate trousers game. Read it, check it out. Let's see if we can get this rivalry going, because it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a game that let me pull that back. I don't know if it's going to be technically a good football game, but there's going to be a lot of emotion on the field. There's going to be some grudges. There's going to be two teams that haven't shown out this year, that are just desperate for a win, desperate for respect. They may not be playing for a postseason berth, but they are playing for something that's more valuable, Shane. That's more valuable than any trophy you'll put in your trophy case, and that's pride. They're playing for pride, buddy. So watch the game. Enjoy it. I'll be covering it via Twitter. I will not be in San Marcos, unfortunately. And with that, that is my parting shot, plug, and promo. With that, I guess we got to say adios. We miss old Dusty. Like, he should be back next week. Shane, where are you going to be this weekend?
I'm going to start in Harrisonburg at the JMU Georgia State football game.
All right.
And then as soon as it's over, or as soon as I'm done writing, getting in the car with some people to get to Chapel Hill for JMU North Carolina basketball game.
Sounds like an excellent weekend. I am jealous.
It should be fun.
I will have my big ass on the couch watching some Sunbelt football all day long. Looking forward to it. Until then, my name's Jeremy Harper. His name's Shane Metlin. Dusty Thibodeau is off tonight, but we'll be back next week. And this has been another sponsorless episode of FunBelt Podcast.